How you doing out there, Livia? My name is Crem, and I'm the Director of Fitness, and thank you so much for joining me for today's Mastering Form workout. What you can expect in the Mastering Form classes is to be able to give you some of the breakdown and fundamentals of how to do specific movements properly. That's very important because number one, it's making sure that you're doing exercises correctly so that way you're doing them safely. You're less likely to injure yourself if you're really paying attention to your form. And number two, to make sure that your body is developing the way you intended to be. So that way you are progressing, you are toning and sculpting those muscles and getting them stronger in the way you intended. So mastering form is really important. Before we dive on into that though, always make sure that you check with your doctor before you begin any type of activity. Make sure it's always A-OK before you begin. And always have some water with you handy. Got to stay hydrated, so that's no different when you're doing any type of activity. It's just to make sure that you've got your water nearby. Now, in this workout series today, I'm going to show you some exercises that really help some of the target muscle groups. We're going to work on the back of the arms today. We're going to work on the back muscles, and we're also going to work on the rear area and the back of the thighs. I'm going to show you 3 different movements so that way if you decide you want to put them together into your own workout, you have an upper body routine, upper body exercise you can add, you have a core or midsection exercise that you can add, and you have a leg or lower body exercise that you could add. So it allows you that ability to mix things up. Now, the great thing about the exercises that I'm going to show you today is that you can do them anywhere. So if you're in your home, they work great. If you're traveling, totally fine. If you're at a gym, you can do them with you there too. And you don't really need any type of equipment to do this. Now, I'm going to be showing you with some dumbbells today, but if you've got cans, if you've got water bottles, anything lying around at home, that will work just fine too. Also, resistance bands work great with these movements. So there's definitely some ways that you can bring in some different types of equipment if you don't have actual dumbbells lying around. And I'm also going to show you some ways that you can modify those movements if you need to, okay? That's always important because maybe doing a specific move in the traditional way isn't really where you're at right now. And it's important to make sure that you have something that you can kind of modify, that you can say, okay, I can start here and progress to that point. So, as usual, before we get started, you're going to basically see along the way, I'm going to let you know when there's some modifications. So you'll see that kind of come across the screen. And I'm also going to give you some tips as to why that specific movement is helpful for your body. So stay tuned. You'll see that across the screen as well. So let's dive on into that together. So the first thing we're going to do is you're going to want to have a bench for this move or a chair. If you choose a chair, just make sure it's a chair that is nice and sturdy. Nothing with rollers, nothing that's going to move on you. You can do this move on the floor, which I'll show you after that. But let's go ahead and get started. We're going to dive into doing an exercise that works the back of the arm. Okay, so I'm going to grab my bench here because I got it right nearby specifically for this. Sliding it out a little bit. Now, when it comes to the back of the arm, one thing that's important to do is to make sure your elbows are feeling really good. If you're someone who has a lot of tension on the elbow joint, then making sure that you're doing this move properly is really important because you don't want to hyperextend or make that movement any worse than it is. So what we're going to do now is called a tricep kickback, okay? Because this is the back of the arm. This is called the tricep, so we're going to do what's called a kickback for it. Now I'm going to grab my dumbbell here. And on the bench, whether I'm on a bench or I'm on a chair, this is the position I want to be in. I'm going to have one hand extended here. I'm going to have the leg that with the arm that I'm using sort of kick back behind me out of the way. I don't want it too close. I want to move this here. I want to make sure my back is nice and straight. What I want to avoid doing is having any slouching in my back. So I want to make sure my spine is nice and straight. Always pick, if you're doing something with dumbbells or barbells or any kind of resistance, pick resistance that you feel comfortable with. Form is most important, okay? It's not about the weight that you can actually move. So I would say, especially if this is a new move for you, start out with something light and you can always progress to something heavier. Okay, so I'm just going to use a 3-pounder, okay? Something that's manageable. Now, I'm gonna make sure my arm, basically the back of my arm and my elbow is level with my back. I wanna avoid having my arm up too high, okay? So it's level with my back, kind of see how that goes. My arm is bent and my chest is down, just like this towards the bench. And I'm gonna swing this dumbbell back, hence the word kickback. And when I'm doing that, what I wanna make sure that I'm focusing on is, number one, my arm itself isn't moving, which means I'm not doing this. You see that? This is what I want to avoid, because at this point, I'm not focusing on the back of the arms as much. There's a lot of other muscle groups that are getting involved, and it's just not the proper form to do the exercise, right? So, arm is up here, level with the body, and I'm going to kick this back. Just like so. And what I'm focusing on is I'm squeezing the back of that arm. There we go. Back of the arm. Good. And I want to keep my elbow tight to my body. I don't want it out here. I want it nice and tight here. Now, let's say, for instance, you say, Crem, I don't have a bench. Same thing works on a chair. Or if you say, well, I really don't have a chair handy, you can definitely do this on the floor if you needed to. And the way you can make that adjustment is being down on the ground, on all fours. Hand is still out here, flat back, that hasn't changed. And I'm still going to kick it back. Chest is down. So you can absolutely make a modification to this one if you don't have a bench or you don't have a chair that's handy. Okay, so that's going to work the back of the arm. You should definitely feel that. Whether you have a 3-pound, a can, or you're using a 25-pound dumbbell or resistance band, if you're doing that form correctly, you're going to really feel that. Now, the reason why tricep kickbacks, that move, or anything that's specifically in that extension movement is great for the back of the arm is when you're really developing the triceps or the back of the arms, it's really great for overall muscle strength in the upper body. Also, when you push up, anytime you happen to push yourself up from a chair or you push yourself up from the bed, back of the arms are really helpful for that. And not to mention, it kind of helps with that wave that sometimes, we may get. So it's a really good exercise to incorporate and really, really important muscle group to work. Okay, good. Now let's go ahead and move on. We're going to go now to the back, okay? To our back area right here. Now we're going to use the same thing. We're going to go ahead and bring the bench out, or we're going to actually use a chair if we have it, because we can do that with it. So let's get my bench here. It's coming in handy today. All right, let me make one single little adjustment here. There we go. Nothing like a little sunshine. Okay, now, the interesting part of this is it's pretty much the same movement we just went over. Okay, so we're going to work this part of the back. Now, this part of the back is really important because just in general, working your back muscles is really great for upper body strength. It also helps to really keep real overall good posture. So you want to have a nice, strong back area. It's really important for your spine, it's really important for your core, and overall strength for your body. So doing back exercises are really, really important for you. Now this move is very similar to what we just did as far as the position that we get in. So this is called a dumbbell row, okay? Now, again, if you don't have a dumbbell, you can call it a can row, or you can call it a water bottle row. But it's a rowing motion because that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to row, right? So everything is still the same. I've got my back is perfectly straight. My hand is here. This leg is out of the way. I've got my resistance, whatever I'm going to use. But the difference is instead of my arm being up here, I'm going to start it out here. And I want to focus on bringing this dumbbell or whatever I'm using to my hip. And when I do that, I want to squeeze this part of my back, okay? Now, when you're doing that, it's important to make sure that you don't overly squeeze your hand or your grip around whatever you're using. Sometimes it happens when we do back exercises as we overly squeeze the grip, and that puts a lot of tension on the forearm muscles. Okay, so try to relax your grip no matter what you're holding. Just a little tip for you. All right, so I'm starting here, leg is out the way, rowing, row. And I want to think about bringing the dumbbell to my hip. To my hip. That's exactly where we're going for. Just like that. And I'm squeezing. And I want to keep, again, my elbow in tight to me. Tight to me. I don't want it out here. Okay? Nice and tight. And row. Now, let's just say, for instance, we said, okay, I get it, but I don't have a bench. I don't have the ability to do that in a chair that's stable. The great thing is that you can use this movement by just leaning onto something. So let's say, for instance, you've got a couch, you've got the back of a chair, or you've got something that's a little bit stable, or a desk even, okay? You can just bend over, put some slight bend in the knees, your arm is here, this arm's doing nothing at all, and I'm gonna row, row. Now I will say, even though you can stand up and do this, if you find that you've got some tension in your lower back area, your core, maybe if that's not as strong, I would highly recommend using a bench or using a chair that you can actually put your knee on to do that. It'll help alleviate some of that pressure off the lower back if that happens to be something that troubles you a little bit. But you can absolutely make that modification. Now let's just say, for instance, you're like, okay, that's me, Crem. I don't have a bench, I don't have a chair that I trust, and being upright like this hurts my lower back. Okay, modification. Again, you're getting in that, what I like to call that tabletop position. All right, I'm on my all fours. I've got my resistance, and I'm rowing from here. And instead of letting the weight sort of come down, the resistance come down to the floor, what I want to do with it is I'm just going to go ahead and have it out here and row it here. So it gives me that full range of motion, but it keeps some of that tension off my lower back. Okay, so just a little way that those little tweaks are something that you can kind of do to modify those moves if you need to. So really important, back of the arms and the back muscles, really key things to work on. All right, so we're going to go ahead and transition now to the core, okay? Core muscles. Now, when it comes to the core, there's a lot of different exercises that you can do. Core, midsection, belly, tummy, whatever you want to call it. There's a lot of different exercises that you can do. The reason why doing core exercises is really, really important is it really helps to strengthen the upper body. It strengthens the spine. It helps with your posture. It helps with your balance. So there's so many important factors of really helping to keep this core area nice and strong. And also, not to mention, if you're wanting to sort of, keep it nice and tight and firm, doing core exercises are really great with that too. Okay, so we're going to do an exercise that works primarily more so on the lower part of the stomach muscles. Now, the key thing about the core is even though you may do an exercise that you feel it more here, you're still working the other areas, okay? But we're going to try to focus right down on the lower part of the stomach today. We don't need any resistance for this, just a nice soft space that you can feel like you want to lie on. And my head doesn't do anything with this one. I'm just going to relax my shoulders, relax my head. Now, I will say, if lower back is something that's painful for you, this is a move that I would not try, okay, just to let you know, because you're going to get a lot more flexion from that lower back. But if your lower back is okay, then this is definitely something that I would say would be nice to add to your routine. Okay, it's called a reverse crunch, and a reverse crunch is a really nice way to ease into doing any exercise that involves the lower part of the stomach muscles. So, shoulders are down, head is down. My knees are going to be bent about 90 degrees, and I'm going to bring my knees into my chest, as far as I can and rotate down to the floor. Bring my knees as far as I can into my chest. And as I'm doing that, I'm squeezing my muscles. I always like to think about I'm pulling my belly button through the floor. And I'm lifting. And I'm bringing my feet down about 2 inches or so from the floor. And what I want to make sure that I do is eliminate any space in between the small of my back. So I'm pulling those muscles in. Make sure I'm breathing. There we go. And squeeze. And up. Perfect. Now let's say for instance you said, well, that's great, Crem, but I am someone who has some lower back tension, but I really want to try that. So how would I try it and how would I minimize any pain there? Is I would say get something that you can roll underneath your lower back, like a hand towel, maybe something small enough, something where you feel like you can take that space in between your lower back and the floor and just sort of tuck it under here. See if that gives you some support. Also, watch your range of motion. And what I mean by that is that if you did want to try this move, and just to see how your back responds, is to make sure that you don't rock those hips off the floor. Now, there is definitely benefits to doing that when it comes to doing your core workouts. But if you're someone who has lower back pain, you want to try to avoid lifting those hips off. So just enough to where your knees come into your chest and you control the movement. Also, if you are someone that suffers with a little lower back pain, you may want to start limiting your range of motion to wherever it's comfortable for you. And that may just be to here. So maybe your knees come in and they go down, right? Perhaps going down so far is really taxing on your lower back. So there's definitely ways you can kind of minimize that if you needed to. But the reverse crunch is a really good way to work the stomach muscles, but also focus a little bit more on the lower part of the belly. That is a really good area to work. It's also really great about strengthening, as I mentioned overall. Good. Okay. We worked on the back. We worked on the back of the arms. We worked on some of the stomach. Let's now transition to the back of the thighs. Great thing is we're already on the floor. We can stay right here. Now, this is called a reverse leg curl. Now, leg curls will work the back of the thigh right here, and also the rear end area. The benefits of working the back of the thigh and the rear end area is legs power the whole body. So it's really important to have really, really strong legs. But sometimes we'll focus a lot on strength in the front of the thighs, which is a good thing. But we tend to sometimes neglect areas in the back of the thighs. And it's important to make sure that your legs are very well rounded with regards to strength, okay? Because it's good for your balance and it's good for overall strength for the body, and not to mention your spine. So you want to make sure that you're really helping to strengthen those muscles back there. Now, the reverse leg curl is an exercise that you can do lying down, which is great. So if you're someone who has some tension on the lower back, this is a little bit easier to do. Now, you can do it with resistance or without a resistance, which is good. So you have some variety there. We're going to be in the tabletop position, which is what I call all fours. And I want to make sure my core is nice and tight. My chest is flat down to the floor. And I'm going to bring my leg 90 degrees. And I'm going to bring it up. And as I bring it up, I'm going to make sure my back is strong. I want to avoid dipping my lower back. So I don't want to do this, where my lower spine begins to dip down. Again, it's important to make sure that you're taking care of your back. So we only want to go as far as we can with staying in proper alignment. Now, right here, and down. If this is as far as your leg, think about your heel going towards the ceiling. This is as far as you can do while staying up tall, your back straight, that's fine. Anything more than that is going to be unnecessary for you, putting your body out of proper alignment. And I'm thinking about forcing the back of my leg to the ceiling. If I wanted to use some resistance, I would just tuck this right here in between my back of the leg, my calf, and the back of my thigh. And it's still the same thing, everything strong. And I'm gonna press that back of the leg up. There we go. So this works great with or without, okay? Now let's say for instance, you being on your wrists or being on your arms, being on your hands is a little tough for you because sometimes that can be tough to maintain that position. You can definitely drop down to your elbows, so this is a really good modification for it. Right here, core tight, really important to do. Same position with the heel, okay, 90 degrees, and up, and up, and up. There we go, just like that. I want to avoid, whether I'm on my hands or I'm down on my elbows, I want to make sure I'm avoiding the swinging. Swinging. Notice when I'm swinging what happens to my spine. It begins to curve. So I want to avoid that. Right? So I'm going to come just to where this knee is. And up. And up. And up. Good. All right. Back of that thigh is pretty tired. Okay. So we went through several different exercises to really think about and focus on the form. Okay? The back of the arms, the back muscles here, the lower part of the belly, and the back of the legs. Okay, these are some really good exercises that you can add to your routine, whether you're doing an upper body routine or lower body routine, or you're kind of mixing some things together. Just remember, no matter what, learning the proper form is essential to do. Take your time with an exercise until you get down. Take your time with it. Really, it's okay to go slower until you really get the movement. And absolutely start with no resistance and build up to it if that's something that's important to you to do too. Because you want to make sure that you got the form down first. Super important, okay? It was so great showing you these exercises today. I look forward to showing you more exercises that you can do and showing you how to master that form. See you again soon. If you have any questions about these specific exercises or others, feel free to email me directly at fitness@livia.com.